With the Gojo and Sukuna fight still going on, a lot of people are still wondering exactly how is Sukuna or how is Gojo going to win this fight, and we keep thinking that we kind of know exactly what they're going to do to win, but then the narrative keeps getting shaken up and Gege keeps throwing these curveballs at us that make us sit there and wonder, like, who's actually going to win this, who's going to defeat the other person, and how is that exactly going to happen. And in today's video, I kind of wanted to go over one of the theories as to how maybe Sukuna could win this fight, or maybe he could deal a lot of damage to Gojo, or kind of just pull out something Gojo is not expecting at all. I don't want to toot my own horn, but I did completely predict that Sukuna would do something just like this, and I even mentioned the fact that it would have the name Chimera in it, or the process that he would kind of bring about making these different creatures would be called Chimera. And as you can see right here, I did have this video in the works, I just did not have it completed, but I completely predicted the fact that he would start kind of merging a bunch of these Shikigami together to eventually create something even better and stronger, and that's exactly what he's starting to do. But in this video, I'm going to kind of go over what the extremes would be of him kind of merging them all together and what he could eventually lead up to, but I just wanted to kind of get that out of the way. Before we kind of get into this theory though, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you see anything you like here, as I make a lot of videos very similar to this one. Thank you. So the idea behind this theory has to delve into how the 10 Shadows technique kind of works, and how we've seen Megumi in a way use this technique to bolster some of his other Shikigamis by actually having one of them pass away. As we all might remember, early on in the series when Megumi was actually fighting that finger bear special curse grade spirit, remember that the white dog of his divine dogs actually did pass away in that fight. So we saw that it got destroyed, and at the time we were wondering what exactly happens to the different Shikigami if they do indeed pass away, since as we all know, he is, one of many of the 10 Shadows users that have existed in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen. So he's not the first one, he is one of many that have previously been around, and some of these have actually defeated 6 Eyes users, so we know that this is a long history of 10 Shadows users. But many have wondered, have none of them actually lost any of their Shikigami, and how does Megumi still have all 10? And the answer likely lies in the fact that whenever that white Shikigami, or the white version of divine dogs, did pass away, we saw later on during his fight with Hanami, it actually fused in a way with the black dog to create a sort of divine dog totality, the name is, and this version is way more powerful and inherited all of the abilities of the white version, transferred it to the black version, and made it that much more dangerous. At this point, I feel like a lot of people are going to kind of see where I'm going with this theory, and yes, I do wonder if he can actually, or Sukuna in this case, can actually have many of the Shikigami pass away and inherit themselves into each other, kind of leading up the chain to the point where they're going to inherit into Mahoraga. Now, many people are probably thinking, there's probably a bunch of different holes, or maybe a couple different holes with this theory, and I am going to address at least one of these at the end of the video. But before that, I do want to get into how maybe this theory is very plausible, and how maybe this could be something that does occur inside of the manga at some point, and maybe Sukuna could potentially use this to bolster Mahoraga as a sort of last-ditch effort to get him to become even stronger than he already is. And he could possibly do this after he maybe bypasses infinity from Gojo completely, since in the most recent chapter, chapter 231, we see that he's kind of on his way into doing that, and he's going to try to do his best to completely nullify infinity, get past limitless, get past all of Gojo's defenses, his attacks, and just completely have him at his mercy in a way. It's definitely a very interesting thought. As we all know, Divine Dog on its own was definitely a very strong cursed spirit, as it was able to take down the Finger Bearer, which is obviously a lesser special grade, but it was still special grade, and the Black Dog on its own was able to kind of one-shot it when it put its arm through its chest. But then we go to Hanami, which is definitely a special grade that is on the higher of the pedestal against the Finger Bearer, and the Divine Dog Totality was able to kind of completely blitz Hanami and get off one of its arms, even though Hanami has that kind of thick outer coating. And Hanami at the time was a very, very strong opponent, not somebody to be messed with, and Divine Dog Totality, after the upgrade from getting, consumed or having white introduced into the picture, was definitely able to keep up and was able to actually damage Hanami. So that just shows just how big of a boost the 10 Shadows techniques, or the 10 Shadow Shikigami, get just from having inherited the abilities of the last one. It kind of seems like it isn't like a 1+1 thing where you have one and it makes 2. It seems like it's like a sort of multiplier where you get the abilities of the other other one, and like you get a lot stronger even then than it would have been if two of them are out on the field at the same time. I feel like this ability for them to kind of be able to mix and meld into each other is very intentional, since it makes a lot of sense. You're kind of sacrificing utility for raw power or raw ability in one Shikigami instead of having the utility of having a bunch of different ones to kind of do different things, kind of be on the field, since that is one of the big benefits of the 10 shadows technique. It has a lot of utility. You're able to use a bunch of these shadows, you're able to kind of do a lot of different things with them, but you're kind of sacrificing that to create something greater, something that is singular but can do a lot more on its own. And I do think that is very interesting. I think that this would very much help Sukuna out in this fight, depending on what he wants to do moving forward, and depending on what Gojo does or how Gojo reacts, or if Gojo is stripped of his limitless technique. It really does depend, but I do think that ability to mix and mash and kind of sacrificing utility versus, you know, having, you know, raw strength is very useful, especially against someone like Gojo, where you kind of can't really do any tricks with Gojo. You have to just outright, in a way, be able to destroy this guy. And I definitely think that with the ability to kind of meld them all together and create a stronger singular being, that would be possible. And I'm feeling like if you were to actually have them destroy each other up until Mahoraga and have him inherit all of the abilities of the previous ones, it would create a Mahoraga that is astronomical in terms of strength, size, speed, really just everything. What I find very interesting and maybe makes all of this plausible is the fact that Megumi's innate domain technique, his domain expansion if you would say, is called Chimera Shadow Garden, and I feel like that name Chimera kind of plays into this ability of them molding together and creating a one singular being in a way that people maybe didn't notice, and maybe now after hearing the name Chimera and hearing about the fact that they're able to kind of mold together and create a singular being that has a bunch of the abilities of the previous one, is kind of, you know, having everybody think like, okay, maybe this is a legit thing that could happen in the story. If we take the literal definition of Chimera, you know, obviously being that Greek mythology creature with the snake tail and the lion head, we're gonna obviously be like, well, that doesn't really kind of work in this situation. But if you kind of take the vague idea of a chimera, which I'm assuming Chimera Shadow Garden, that ability is kind of taken from, you know, the base kind of vague idea of what a chimera would be, is obviously a big amalgamation of a bunch of different things, a bunch of different animals. It could just be a bunch of different anything, and that is kind of, I feel like, what he's kind of going with in terms of the word chimera in his domain expansion. I feel like this kind of plays on the fact that, you know, the chimera aspect of it comes from the fact that the Shikigami can all fuse together to create that one singular being that is going to be, of course, a chimera abomination of all of the different aspects of the previous Shikigami that would kind of level up and go into that final form. And of course, if the finger bearer was taking down a special grade, a lower special grade, but a special grade on its own was taken down by a singular divine dog, and Hanami was able to get damaged by totality, you can only imagine what Mahoraga right now, which is already powerful enough on his own, would be if he were to inherit the rest of the Shikigami in like a last-ditch effort by Sukuna to finally once and for all take down Gojo. You can only imagine just how strong of a curse that would become, and just how powerful Mahoraga would be in that moment if it does work in that way and he is able to kind of inherit all of the different abilities of the Shikigami beforehand to create that one singular Mahoraga that is just amped up to the max, the strongest version of him, the apex of himself, and something that would probably never before be seen inside of the Jutsu world. Maybe nobody else has kind of thought to kind of, you know, make a Mahoraga that strong, and I feel like that would be very crazy, especially right now in Sukuna's hands, and Sukuna would definitely be able to put that to what much better use than what maybe somebody like Megumi would be able to do, unfortunately. But Sukuna is the king of curses. He just knows so much about cursed energy and curses in general. He would definitely be able to put this Mahoraga to use, and maybe that is kind of what he's leading up to in this fight. It definitely took me a while to kind of see the fact that the Chimera Shadow Garden, the domain expansion of Megumi, and the fact that they're able to kind of mash together after they pass away makes a lot of sense when you put them together. And Sukuna, of course, is definitely somebody that would put this to use. He's a dirty fighter. We see he's done a lot of different things just to take Sukuna, or I mean Gojo, down, and I feel like he would not put this past himself. If he knew that this is something that is possible, he probably will use it, and I feel like he might use it in the future. Now, I do want to say this as a sort of disclaimer. This is a theory of mine. This isn't fact in general, and I just want to create some discussion on the idea of maybe this is possible, and I do want to hear everybody else's ideas in the comment section down below. The only thing I feel like maybe is kind of holding this theory back is the fact that if we don't know that different Shikigami that aren't very similar can do this, maybe it was just the divine dogs that can do it since they are like twin pups, or maybe this is all the Shikigami themselves. We just don't know at this point in the story, since we don't have a really big explanation of the 10 shadows techniques, honestly, even at this stage in the story. So we just don't know at this point. But I definitely do think that given the name of the domain that Megumi uses and a bunch of the different kind of things things going on with the fact that they're able to inherit the abilities of the previous one after they pass away, and we've only seen one of them pass away, which is the white one. I do wonder if this is something that he can actually exploit and use going into the fight with Gojo, and I do think that Sukuna would definitely exploit this. He's definitely going to do it if he is able to, and I'm wondering if maybe Gege would even have this be a possibility. But definitely let me know what you guys thought of this theory in the comment section down below, and let me know if you think this is plausible, if you agree with it, or if you think something else could happen. Also, like the video if you liked it and subscribe, as it really does help me out, and I really do appreciate each and every one of you guys for sticking around and watching the video. I thank you guys immensely, and with that being said, I'm out. Peace.